was talking to somebody earlier today, and they said one of the biggest challenges in terms of the direction for the sector, the industry writ large, is, last year, the last couple of years was a problem with capital, just getting capital into the system. Where are we with that? And
I think it's still
coming
a challenge.
out of that? Yeah, okay.
It's still a challenge for our industry for a couple of reasons. One is public perception of mining. So the off the street investor, mining is typically high risk, high reward investment, and I think it's evolved from that into a solid investment. The capital, we've had a challenge in our industry in delivering projects on time, on budget.
Get in line.
You know what? Every industry has.
Sure, absolutely.
And there is a U of T professor did a study across public and private sector, all kinds of construction, and found in general projects are behind schedule and over budget. That doesn't, just because everyone else is that way, that doesn't excuse us. Capital is hard to come by, and the investment of capital, needs a certain rate of return for those investors. There's a mix within our industry. There's some great investments. There's some investments that didn't pan out. No pun intended. But that's mining, and that's actually any other industry when you look at it.
Yeah, and I agree. The problem is once you have that mindset embedded in a general perception culturally out there, it's hard to shake that, right? I mean, that becomes a negative. It doesn't matter if it's a negative for everybody else building infrastructure or whatever it happens to be. If you get tagged with that, it's a hard thing to shake. So at what level is the industry, or is there a coordinated effort even to change that perception?
Well, so the short answer is yes, but I'm going to give you more than a short answer. Mining Association of Canada and many mining organizations recognize problem with the public perception. So there was a real effort to make people understand that the microphone we're using, the electronics, the lights, all of that needs mining. So your bicycle,
your telephone,
everything.
Yeah.
So recent studies by the Mining Association of Canada, public gets that. They know that they like minerals. They just don't like mining. So that's our catch-22. And our next step as an industry is to be socially responsible, to support the communities we live and work in, to be conscious of the environment and leave things in a better state than they were when we got there. There's a lot of companies that are completely committed to that. And that's the next stage of public perception that I see. The public understands minerals are important. Now what they have to understand that mining is a sustainable industry and can provide those minerals without harming the environment.
Yeah, it's interesting you use the phrase, leave it better than we found it feel to it. And that is an indigenous approach to the environment. That is the indigenous approach to natural resources, mining or forestry, for example. And I'm finding the more conversation I have here is that when we include the questions to the First Nations indigenous communities that are involved in mining particularly, it's as if they've been sort of sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden now, the Western approach is catching up to the indigenous traditional approaches in many respects, that their old wisdom has become this new social way of thinking or the new science behind our innovation. And I think it's a fascinating evolution that's happening right in front of our eyes.
I would, and it goes beyond indigenous, because if we look around the world, you need to engage the communities that you live and work in. And if that community is indigenous, then you have to seek to understand. How's the saying? Seek to understand before trying to be understood. I didn't get it quite right, but it goes beyond indigenous, because if you're doing work in Mexico, if you don't engage the community, you won't be in operations long. And it's about early engagement. It's about creating jobs. It's about being cognizant of the impacts you'll have on the people, which includes the environment, includes the economy, all kinds of things. And I think we've been focusing on that for a while, and we're starting to learn the right way to do it. Because whenever you start doing something like that, you make a lot of assumptions. And then based on the things you get wrong, you change them, you begin to understand more. And I think the mining industry is making that transition. And
is it running out of time, though? I mean, did you get to a point where that there's the diminishing return on that effort to actually change hearts and minds around the perception?
There are companies that have lost their license to mine because they've lost their social license.
Right.
And everyone's aware of that. And everyone knows, you don't need case studies to say, well, Company A isn't up there right now because they didn't engage the community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just. I like to compare it to safety and our progress there. Safety went from compliance to commitment. What I mean by that, there was legislation that you had to follow to protect your people. But there was a point in our industry where we recognized that the legislation was the minimum. And that's where we began to see commitment to safety. And the commitment is going beyond compliance. And in safety, it was more defined, I think. But in terms of culture, in terms of engaging the community, I see more and more companies that are committed, not just because they have to do it, but because they want to do it.